Hello and welcome to what is hopefully an unusual episode of this unnamed reaction series. Because normally, this is about the episode Mugato Gumato, but normally I would go over the last episode a bit back there. We'll always have Tom Paris. I'd go to the Reddit and I'd tell you, what most people think and kind of react to the reactions of the last episode. But this is an interesting time because the Star Trek Reddit is actually private, protesting basically Reddit's lack of action against misinformation on their site. I can say COVID misinformation. I didn't because I didn't want to be demonetized, but then I remembered I'm not monetized. Hey, look at that, 11:05, it's up, so I'll make this brief. Yeah, a protest that might end, because it seems like Reddit has done what they've said literally like an hour ago. I haven't actually fully been able to look into it. But yeah, no discussions about Tom Paris, and what may be for the first time in modern Star Trek history, an episode not immediately followed by the now beloved and famous canon reference post on Reddit. I actually reached out to the person who did them, thanking them for... I mean, that's become such a huge part of the episodes. I didn't realize till now how much I missed them, or I'm going to miss them, rather, how important they'd become. And I even offered up space on the channel. I'm like, look, if you want a platform, I'll do the videos if you just want to put the time. But for time constraints, they said they wouldn't. Hopefully, we can all go on tomorrow and look at those. But it means I can't put it into the video. So without further ado, I'll give you one canon reference. I found out Mugato Gumato, because I was like, that's gotta be a reference I don't understand, on Memory Alpha. I'll just read it. The title is a reference to the confused naming of the Mugato in A Private Little War. The creature was named Gumato in the script, but DeForest Kelley could not pronounce the word Gumato, so it was changed to Mugato, which Kelley and William Shatner proceeded to pronounce Mugatu, as opposed to Mugato. The actor was credited in the episode as Gumato. So I expect a scene and that episode by me there, and without further ado, I'm gonna go watch the episode. Well, this is a week full of firsts. Those last, 5-7 minutes, everything from when Boimler and Rutherford came in with like the projector, the Ferengi, great. The B-plot, the Tendi medical exam B-plot, that was a real solid B-plot. Not strong enough to carry a series, but that was good. It had the reference of like, that's a common Star Trek thing. You didn't get your physical or whatever. Especially the Dr. Tiana being the one who didn't get their final physical. I kind of clocked onto it just before the main episode. But yeah, that was a real solid B-plot. That was enjoyable. Everything else in between just didn't really do it for me. This is the first episode of Lower Decks. No, it's not the first. I wasn't the biggest fan of Envoys. I think there was another one in Season 1. I can't remember. But this is the first episode of Season 2 that just didn't really do it for me. I'll start with the positives. I appreciated the Lower Decks. Mariner had that comment where she was like, what are you, one of those last outpost Ferengi, like Quark or whatever? That was great, because it's like, let's do a Ferengi villain story. Let's set up that after Deep Space Nine, the Ferengi all didn't go completely liberal, but their society reformed. It ties up that Deep Space Nine thing very nicely. It wasn't just, they hired Rom, he's going to be deposed in like a year. It was, no, Grand Nagus Zek actually did a lot of reforms. People went by them. And now Rom's reforms actually work. The Ferengis are a good society. I love that respect to canon. Having Shax back, I like it. But again, just because this episode didn't really do it for me so much, for a lot of reasons I'll get into, it wasn't really like, yay, Shax's back. It was like, this is a meh. It's a meh episode. It wasn't a bad episode. It wasn't a Sub Rosa or a Threshold. It was, I don't know, I'm generally looking now, a Royale, maybe? A Skin of Evil? Like, I don't know, it just didn't really do much for me. That, like, majority, everything but the ending. And there were two main reasons for... Well, actually, another thing, I love that kind of the mispronunciation of the Mugatu. was a running joke. It also means I can mess it up in this video and pretend it was a joke. Yeah, before I do like a frame-by-frame analysis, I think there were two main things that made this episode fall flat for me. The first is the sort of the general plot line. It had, again, just like Cupid's errant arrow is the episode, where there was almost that, not class structure, but like, I don't know, high school social class thing of like, why would Mariner, their exact words, like, why would Mariner, like a hyper badass, hang out with people like us? I'm like, why not? I mean, that sort of like high school class system, I don't know, I'm sure there's a name for it. And like, even when people say like that person's way out of your league for like dating stuff, I didn't realize that was an actual thing, like that league system, until recently. And I'm honestly still not sure it's a thing. I thought it was entirely a work of fiction. And maybe you'd say I'm naive, but this is the late 24th century. Like, this is utopian. Like, at least socially, this is utopia. Why is this still a thing? And so I never liked that. Like, why... I can't actually comprehend a reason why Mariner wouldn't be friends with Boimler and Rutherford. And that's a no as well. They mixed up... I didn't even notice it until a bit through the episode. They had done a swap of... it wasn't a Tendi Rutherford Mariner Boimler episode. It was a Boimler Rutherford episode with Tendi doing their own thing. So they're mixing up that dynamic again, which is nice. I think the second thing is that there wasn't really anything going on in the episode. Like, I like the B plot because there was something happening. Like, she was going through the list, Tendi was. She was getting people in kind of comical ways, and then eventually it had that climax of like, it's Dr. Tiana who didn't get her thing, her exam. But with the A plot, you know, they go down to see these Mugatos. They think Mariner might be like some weird Section 1 secret agent thing, which, as an audience member, I know she almost certainly isn't. Like, I can kind of get, yeah, that's gonna be a thing. Like, she's not. It's all in your heads. And for several reasons throughout the episode, just kind of it's the general Lower Decksy thing to do. I could see them pulling out randomly Mariner's just some weird secret agent, but like they had all kind of the reasons that could easily be explained, and like those quick reflex things. But also there's a scene where she like stabbed Saxon and drank his blood, and I had the like insert action like, oh my god, what? But like even before I could finish that thought, I went, oh, she's sucking venom out of a wound. Like, they even set up that they have venomous horns or whatever, which, I don't know, a Starfleet officer, especially one going to fight venomous creatures, should probably know and have been briefed on. Like, I think I might have read you're not actually supposed to do that, like sucking venom. Don't quote me on this, I'm not a doctor. But even if it isn't true, like, clearly for Mugato blood, there you go, I've done it wrong again. For Mugato blood, you've, you know, it's something you have to do. And so the Starfleet officer should know that. But yeah, they go through, and it's like, I don't know, they're kind of running away. There's that weird Mugato sex scene that, I mean, was honestly just more a bit uncomfortable than, like, entertaining. Then you got to the ending. And that's the bit I like. You got to the ending where they actually, like, negotiate with the Ferengi. They set up the things. I almost feel like you can tell there wasn't enough going on because you had a C plot with that, like, random person's shuttle and the con artist, which was fun, but, like, I don't know, I mean, I kind of suspect it was filling the A plot, and maybe they couldn't put enough in the Tendi B plot. How long is this episode? 24 minutes, so about the same length as other episodes. But yeah, it just didn't do it for me. But then, once we get to that finale, really solid, and I think I'll just start doing a frame-by-frame analysis now, and I can get into the more nitty-gritty. But before then, I've remembered the first thing is the Anbu-Jitsu opening sequence. I mentioned in the last episode, that was the one thumbnail I had yet to get from my partner, and I got it, like, literally 2 or 3 days ago, so I saw that, and I even texted him, like, yes, it's the Anbu-Jitsu episode, which is great. You can thank them. In the description, I put their stuff. They run a digital art channel doing stuff like that, so check them out if that interests you. But they do all the thumbnails for this episode, except for some like minor touch-up or alterations I might do before actually, you know, putting it in the Photoshop document. So yeah, earlier when I was talking about it should be great having Shax back. This was a moment where, like, yeah, I like having Shax back and just his general character where he's like, oh, don't worry about me. You got 10 more minutes. I'm early. So yeah, I think having Shax back will feel real nice in another episode, like a good one, like a real good one. I'm a bit concerned now though that maybe Shax had his prime in the first season. We got so used to this kind of like amazing character who's now gone. Almost like how the Ninth Doctor is treated, where a lot of people will treat the Ninth Doctor as like the best, like an amazing guy, but he only got one season. And a lot of people now, if you're not into Doctor Who, are kind of saying he needed to just have one season for the show to keep going as long as it does. You can see, I think it's just classic stuff. Where is it? There. My Doctor Who DVDs. I think the modern stuff is all off frame. But basically, he was a doctor who kind of needed that one season to get things to really work. And then you need the regeneration. So people don't get too attached to him, but also understand what the show is. And I'm almost afraid that Shax is kind of like, we were so excited to see him, but I hope he doesn't become well, we saw this in season 1, because that would really taint him, because it turned an amazing character into something that just stuck around too long. Section 31 was a great thing. Loved it in Deep Space Nine. I even liked it in Enterprise. I really, they didn't do much with it, but I liked the Section 31, even though it slightly retconned Deep Space Nine, having them around for longer. And then you get to modern Star Trek, and nobody likes Section 31. Denobulans were nice to see. I recognized them instantly, especially the puffer face thing got a bit of a laugh out of me. I'm not sure if we've seen Denobulans before. Certainly not in a live action, unless Kurtzman completely redesigned them to non-recognition. But we might have seen them in Lower Decks. I don't remember, but it's nice. It's nice seeing Denobulans out of Enterprise, and it always will be. This scene here also actually kind of suggests to me that Shax has retaken up the position of Chief Security Officer, which kind of makes sense, given that there was never really any focus on the new guy, Kayshawn. I don't think he was ever even announced as the security officer in, like, marketing or anything. The fact that the show never built up around this new security officer, I think, is an indication that he was almost just a veil for not having Shax. Like, maybe they'll do stuff with him in the future. But, yeah, it looks like Shax might have taken his old job back as security. That was weird. This is another bit that just didn't jive well with me. Like, yeah, Starfleet officers are playing, some diplomats, I think they called it, which is a nice title. But, like, that's the sort of thing I feel doesn't really belong in a Star Trek. It was almost played as, like, that sort of diplomacy, nerdiness is bad way, almost, which I think it was played too far into that, and it just didn't really sit well with me. Like, yes, this is a game that you probably would have played, but it was almost like the joke is being nerdy and essentially nice is bad. And whereas you could look at now games like Crusader Kings, that are like, that diplomacy stuff is a big part of them, and it's not like, I mean, they're nerdy games, but it's like the nerdiness is a bad thing is almost the joke, and yeah, it just didn't sit well with me. Crazy Conspiracy Guy is interesting to me, because they've had a few times, the Dominion War Isn't Real guy, where again, this episode has a lot of things that didn't gel too well with me. I kind of like the concept, and I really like, my favorite part is the bartender guy who's just like, honestly, get over it. If you don't want to work in the bar, then don't work in the bar. It's not like they have money. But anyway, it's like, it was kind of, Mariner started the rumor. I mean, he's not like a crazy conspiracy theorist guy, because, I mean, some of his stuff have points. Like, he's not, my mom was telling me earlier, there's a guy who thinks birds went extinct in the 80s, and it's the government, not sure which government, because birds are all over the world, but the government spying on you. But, like, the 24th century of Star Trek shouldn't really have human crazy conspiracy people, particularly working on a Starfleet ship. And, yeah, Lower Decks episodes have always, most of them, maybe even all of them, have always had that aspect to me of, you're taking your comedy aspect a bit too far. Little bits. Nothing that really matters. But this was just kind of an episode full of them to me. So I don't know. He was a bit that sort of worked for me. And even though I knew like Mariner wasn't really going to be the Black Ops thing, it was kind of fun having like the over dramatic music and lighting, and that's how like the comedy of Lower Decks I think should work. Because there's a lot of good self-referential humor and good jokes that really have nothing to do with the franchise. But stuff like this in most of the episodes, they've been really good with doing a comedy Star Trek without making fun of Star Trek. Laughing with Star Trek, not at Star Trek, which they've always said might even have been their exact words. I know they've talked about not laughing at Star Trek is a direct quote, but I know that's the goal Lower Decks strives for, and they almost always make it. Just not this time for me. But this scene was a good example. Like, yeah, that was fun. Yeah, another bit with Shax just kind of eating the animal dung was like sort of funny, but also did have that like that's just disgusting vibe. I don't know. It almost I can kind of see. I know Mike McMahon did some Rick and Morty work, and it like a lot of this episode kind of felt like the bits of Rick and Morty that didn't work for me and are kind of like why I don't watch it now. This felt kind of like an episode of the bits of Rick and Morty that didn't work for me. I also want to point out now that as I have to wait for all these images to refresh, Paramount Plus is a streaming service I've been having a lot of weird problems with. Like, I've been getting ads just at the beginning of the episode, even though I pay for no ads, which is fine because I get situated, like, go lie on my bed over there, and it's kind of just about enough time before the episode starts to get situated. But the past 2 episodes, I've had buffering problems, where I've had to, it's like the picture's frozen, and I've had to pause, wait like 2 seconds, and then continue, all throughout the episode, maybe 4 or 5 times, which my internet isn't the greatest. I can't remember if I had this problem at university with literally ludicrous crazy internet, but my internet is good enough to stream, like, HD video. I could do Netflix, I could do YouTube, I could do whatever, and it's like 11, it's between 11 and midnight. No one else is really doing anything with the internet. My younger brother might, but like, I should be able to do this. And people have mentioned before that, yeah, the infrastructure here isn't really the best with Paramount Plus. I mean, it's the only place to get new Star Trek, so I'm gonna use it. It's the only streaming service I use because I buy physical media. There you go. Star Trek is even lower. Yeah, and there you go, it's buffering. There were a lot of points where, like, this isn't the thumbnail, but the Ferengi just have a button, an emergency button that releases all the Gumato or whatever. I don't even remember. But, like, why? I kind of get it has to happen, but it felt more like a lot of this episode's A-plot was because the plot has to happen, not because it makes sense. Especially because they're Ferengi. Like, in the comments, try and tell me a situation with which the Ferengi would want to unleash all of their captive Mugato, that's the one, Mugato, but from, like, the pit where the Mugato all get released into. I'd love to hear it. Might make a good video. Oh, I forgot about this guy, the Australian Tellarite guy, which before you go, why does a Tellarite have an Australian accent, which now I'm really hoping isn't a Kiwi accent, is because he probably grew up in Australia. There you go. Earth, after all, does have Tellarites living on it. But anyway, I love that guy. I think he was probably my favorite bit of, like, this middle bit of the A-plot, where he's just like, yeah, I have 5 books on Bugatti. He's like, no, I didn't write them. I just own 5 books. And then he gets just his head torn off. I love that guy. That was, like, proper Lower Decks humor. Here's a bit of the A-plot I didn't really like, is classic Starfleet medical complete breach of doctor-patient confidentiality. I mean, it was a fun scene other than that. It's actually something I'll have to look through on a rewatch, because I've had this pointed out to me, even by some actual doctors, that they've said that doctor-patient confidentiality in Starfleet is abysmal. And aside from, maybe a few odd examples, I hadn't seen that. But, I mean, it's fun, like an emergency transporter because he broke his hip or something. But she's just, like, there in the bar at a date, like, aha, oh, by the way, you have weak bones. Just like, yeah, that's doctor-patient confidentiality? Anyone? Here's a scene. It was the first time I actually got a bit bored. I completely missed where, I don't bored at Lower Decks, but well, the scene after this, Mariner gets captured by the Ferengi, and then the next time we see him is, like, in the Ferengi camp with Shax, and I'm like, I remember Mariner in the Ferengi trap, but I don't actually remember her being captured. And, is that not gonna play? There we go. That she actually does get captured by Ferengi. Like, we see it and everything. I completely forgot about it by the next scene in, like, a minute's time. So, yeah, I don't know, just didn't keep me hooked. And then we get to this bit. This scene on, everything is great. I love it. Just, like, you know, explaining to the Ferengi how they can make more profit, and, like, also making it an ethical, probably legal way. I think they might actually need permits to set up this sanctuary, but, like, almost tricking the Ferengi into being ethical was brilliant. I loved it. It's also a very Starfleet solution, even in, like, the backhanded, well, you've committed a lot of crimes, we should arrest you, but also, if you kind of just, you know, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, like a very sort of Starfleet solution to the problem. I also just remembered in that last season scene where Mariner was in the bear trap, was where it's like everyone got lice or something. It's like, that's why it's not recorded, is it's so embarrassing. There were a lot of things like, well, is there no sort of, like, freedom of information? I guess I just complained about doctor-patient confidentiality. There you go. Like, yeah, just file it under medical. No, never mind. I've argued myself into liking it because of doctor-patient confidentiality. But at the same time, like, why did you lose the starship? Like, could you just maybe isolate those people, cure them, and then put them back on the Atlantis? Like, I don't know. There's just a lot that didn't land with me. And yeah, that's it. Not a lot to talk about for this episode. I knew there wouldn't be watching it. So I'm just going to take one quick look, and Reddit is still private. So unfortunate, because I'd really love to know what other people think about this episode. I could go to another Reddit, I know. I'm not going to, because quite frankly, that would be a very stupid way to boycott a website, is to just go to a different part of that website. But yeah, hopefully it's up tomorrow for my sake, and I guess our sake, but for the video, no, I'll still put in the description. If the canon references go up, I'll put them back in the description. But yeah, I guess, just didn't do it for me. I don't know, the first Lower Decks episode of the season, and for quite a long time it didn't do it for me. But I hope for better in the future, because that is the great thing about Lower Decks, and episodic TV in general, is the first two seasons of Discovery and the first season of Picard are awful. Why? Because they're serialized season plots, and the main plot was awful, among other things. But yeah, season 3 of Discovery was great, until the Mirror Universe arc and the resolution of the main plot, and that brought the whole season down. Like, it's not awful, it's still a good season, but the whole thing suffered because of 2 bad episodes. 4, I guess, but 2, because of that main plot. Lower Decks, this is a bad episode. The rest of the season could still be great. Heck, half the season could still be great, and you'd still have those greats. I'm slowly been forming the opinion, might even make a video, and honestly, this next few batch of shows is gonna, especially Strange New Worlds, is really gonna set it, but I'm starting to believe you just can't do Star Trek without episodic storytelling, which is completely different than saying you can't do it with serialized. Third and fourth season of Enterprise and Deep Space Nine, great. They also rely on serialization. String continuity, I consider that a form of serialization. But I think you need the episodic for the world building, for the protection of bad episodes, and just Star Trek, what it's about, it just needs to be episodic. Like, you can't do Doctor Who serialized. What? The only piece of world building that has come out of the last 4 seasons of live-action Star Trek is the Zat Vosh and the Quaimalot. I don't know how to pronounce it, but primarily the Qualat Malat, I think, whatever it is, the Warrior Nuns. I know what it looks like. I don't know how to say it. This episode of Lower Decks set up more, or at least just as much, with the Ferengi and just finalizing really what their society looked like and what the results of Deep Space Nine were. this episode alone, let alone the last 2 seasons. But yeah, I'm just gonna be rambling at this point. I hope you enjoyed the first negative review of an episode on this channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.